in the Chicago area. And like anyone who has, prepared for a profession, I thought that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. And then my wife and I started a family of our own. We had 3 young kids and started talking about cutting back some of my hours in clinic so we could have more time together as a family. And about that, after playing it actually for about 9 months, all the doctors were asked to start putting in more time every week just to keep the practice going. And it was the first time I realized how not in control of my time or my future I was. How many of you have hit a situation like that where you started realizing you wanted more control of, I was still willing to work, but I wanted more control over where I spent my time and when I worked rather than have it be totally determined by factors beyond my control. And so that's when an acquaintance introduced me to Nu Skin. It's totally changed my family's life. We grew our family from 3 to 7 kids, and during that time, I transitioned to medicine, to doing this full time. Yeah. And it's work. Okay, it takes time. How many of you know it takes some work? Okay, and but it's extremely rewarding, and it's allowed me to be home. Our youngest 4 kids have never seen me leave the home to go to a regular office. I eventually got to be more of a, taking my kids to their activities and different things like that, and yet also having our world expanded to relationships, including in Europe and being here now. Before we had ever been to these other countries, because of meeting someone who introduced me to someone else, who introduced me to Marion, eventually the business came here. And a little quick side note, because some of you may relate to this, and if not, hopefully some of you remember this, that all started from a town where we moved partway through my business where we didn't know anybody. Okay. How many of you ever, it's a little different with social media maybe now, but how many of you ever either had the thought yourself or had someone on your team have the thought, well, there's not a lot of people around me, or I don't know a lot of people? Anybody ever had that? Okay. So we didn't know anybody. So what was significant for me was having a driving desire to figure this out. Because I wanted more time with my family. That was the initial thing. I wanted more time with my family, and I wanted to continue whatever work I did, because I was the primary income earner for our family, was to still do something that improved people's lives, because that's why I was a doctor in the first place. And how many of you, that's also significant for you, doing something that improves people's lives or makes a difference? And isn't it cool that we get to get paid for improving people's lives? And then what was really cool to me was that and I wasn't expecting this part, it led to meeting other people that expanded our world and brought us over to France, to England, and to eventually, we're in other countries, I just haven't been there yet. Kind of fun to have your business go to places that you haven't even been yet, isn't it? That's really cool, by investing in people. So the little additional factor I wanted to mention, though, as kind of a training point, so I had to meet new people. Okay. How many of you have discovered already something in your skill level, your confidence level, or just your level of connections that you've had to develop, or you're going to have to develop beyond what you already have? Okay? So look around, because almost everybody's raising their hand. That's normal. Okay? So once you decide you want to do this, it's okay that there's some challenges and some skills you need to develop, or some connections you need to develop. As a doctor, I was used to people coming to me. People come to the doctor, right? And they ask for advice, they got problems. And I was used to them listening to what I said and actually doing, or at least pretending to do what I said, okay? As a doctor, right? But when I suddenly started wanting to expand a business, no one was coming to me to ask about business. And they generally weren't coming to me to ask about buying a product either. Okay, so when I started talking about that, I actually discovered that even people that were close to me, some of them started looking at me like I had 2 heads. All right, and I had to start dealing with the fact, like most people have to deal with, but I wasn't used to it, having already gotten to that point in my profession. I had to deal with people saying no, okay, and being not interested, or even being skeptical of me and what I was talking about. And so that was a hurdle that I had to overcome, and then learn to meet new people. So we moved to this town where we didn't know anybody, and I met a realtor who, he was sharp, he had great personality, so I complimented him. And by the way, write this down. When you're connecting with someone new, online or offline, a great little strategy to keep in mind, it's real simple, it's just 3 words or 3 steps, is 1, notice something about them, 2, compliment them, okay? And 3, ask a question. Now that question initially, especially online, you're just meeting someone new, not necessarily going to be immediately inviting them to look at the business. It might be more just connecting with them. asking about something you saw on their post, their profile, etc. Okay. This gentleman, though, this was offline. This is before social media. So we were looking at some properties in Michigan where I was had moved to, and I liked his energy. We had a couple interactions already. Looked at some stuff. So I then asked him, "Hey, by the way, I complimented him. Do you keep your eyes open for projects outside of real estate?" And he's like, "Yeah, I always keep my eyes open. What's up?" So we met briefly. Wasn't the right time for him then, but a few months later it was. He got started with us. He introduced me to another couple who introduced me to Marion, who was there in the States just for a brief window of time with her husband's job. And we happened to meet. She had 3 young kids, was looking for portable income. She got started very part-time. The other 2 were already full-time in their professions, and they went pretty fast in this business, becoming executives, getting some bonuses and different things like that. So I had my eye on them, thinking they're going to be the big players. And Marion was kind of a part-time mom, and then also got transferred to London long distance. And this is before we were doing Skype, so everything was still on by phone. So I didn't know what was going to happen there. But long and short of it is, she had a desire and kept going. Eventually reached out to someone she knew 20 years ago, right? Or briefly in Paris. Wasn't that person's time right at first either, okay? But was it 6-9 months later? It was. Things changed and they connected. And some little things started, some little seeds started to sprout. Meanwhile, the 2 in America, they started just getting tired of, how many of you have ever had somebody quit? Anybody ever had somebody quit? Well, it happened to you too? Okay, so it happens, right? It's normal, because not everybody keeps going. Not everybody's going to say yes. For the people that say yes, some will just become customers, and some will become distributors. Some will choose to LOI and go on to become executive. And some of those who become executives won't stay executive, okay? And then some of those executives will go on to become long-term executives, and some of those will go on to build teams, all right? That's normal. Once you can embrace what's normal, you can get to work and not question yourself. And so those 2 actually, though, they actually kind of drifted away, decided too much work, not enough return. Marion was already on her team, but we couldn't see where it was going yet with Marion. And so they let their business go, and they kind of drifted away, went back to other things that they were doing that were more. How many of you have reached a level of competency or success in some other field in your life so far? Okay? And sometimes, you ever been tempted to just go back to what you already know because you're already good at it? All right? And I wouldn't, because I wanted the freedom. But for them, it was a little easier to do that because they started to question themselves, so they did. But Marion kept going, and it ended up, and that was two people, one in London, one in Paris, eventually turned into a whole team of people over years' time throughout Europe, and then eventually brought me over and so on. So I like to tell stories, and I also like to listen to stories at events like this and from other leaders online or at events, because those stories, you notice the stories kind of stick in your head. And then during the week, when I'm reaching out to people, if I get an answer machine or a wrong number, or someone's skeptical, or someone's not going as fast as I think, I remember some of these stories, and it helps me see things differently and have a bigger view than just what's right in front of me happening right then. Does that make sense? And so we love this business. We love the freedom it's given our family. We love that it improves people's lives. And we love, that it can open up the same possibility that I was given can open up for others. And it's even better now than it was back then. So we're excited for you all. So that's a couple thoughts and in my initial story. And maybe we can go ahead and go to some Q&A. And maybe I'll write a couple things down. If any of the leaders have questions for your teams, or any of you that are brand new, just have a question you'd like to put on the table, and we'll see if any of them overlap, and if we can address a few in the few minutes that we have together.
Well, let me start then, because I know many of them, when we see leaders, you always have the question when you are starting a business, or not where you are now, but at the beginning, you are very busy with lots of things. Can you tell us more about your daily routine?
Daily routine. I'm going to write this down. Okay, daily routine.
When you are building your business.
Yeah. Okay, daily routine, and then why don't I get a few, because I'm just going to put them down here, because some of them might tie together with what I say. Another question, someone else.
Someone's asked if you could only have 3 products for the rest of your life, what would they be? That's hard.
Ask them, which country do I live in?
Very good.
So I guess I'll assume I'm answering for England. All right. Okay.
Well, the US, maybe the US.
Okay. All right, 3 products. Okay, what else? Who else?
How do you influence other health professionals to be in the business?
Ooh,
Or like
okay.
doctors like you?
Health professionals. Okay.
How did you get started, and what kind of did you focus on?
Okay. How did I get started and what did I focus on? How about one or two more and then we'll see how many we can cover.
If you could speak to the young Ben Lowe and tell him what you know now, what would you tell him?
Boy Abunda.
Okay, good. Good question. Okay, one more.
What is your introductory product when you're talking to somebody, particularly the health professionals?
All right. All right. Well, let me address, a couple of them are asking about health professionals. So let me introduce one thought. How many of you would like to know how I got invited? And why I started? Okay. So I didn't get invited because I was a health professional or a doctor per se. I got invited because the acquaintance who knew me had heard me at a gathering, social gathering, mention that I was wanting more time to be with my family. And it was before things really got tight. I'd already been thinking about it. And then 9 months later, when things really changed, is when he had the chance to make that invitation and the timing was right. So here's what he said. Would you like to know what he said?
Yeah.
He called me up and said, now he didn't invite me straight to a business briefing. That was not the first thing he said. He didn't invite me to look at a technology or a scanner or anything like that. The first thing he did was actually ask me a question. So who would like to know what the question is?
Yeah.
All right. Now this is going to be vary from person to person, but here's the question he asked me. He said, Ben, you mentioned wanting more time with your family. Is that still something you're thinking about? Super simple. One sentence, one question, but it showed he was listening. And you know what? Because he asked me at that question, it was right about that time when all the docs had been called into office, and I was really, it's like a dark cloud was over my head. He didn't know that, but he knew I'd already been thinking about it, but he happened to ask it right at that time. So he immediately had my attention. If he started first, we've got Nobel Prize winning technology, we've got the scanner, do you take vitamins? It would have been noise, kind of, you understand? But because he went right to the crux, he said, Ben, you mentioned, he referred to something I said. You mentioned wanting more time with your families. That's still something you're thinking about. He immediately had my attention. And then from there, it was easy for him to invite me. He was actually, at that point, we had a little online presentation. He said, I'm going to send you something to look at. I'm working with some partners. I'm going to send you something to look at. This interests you. I'm going to connect you with my partners. And that's what he did. I watched this. He got me on three-way. And then I met some in person. And that just opened up the door. And it was actually, here's another factor, though. It was actually a couple months before I signed up. I was immediately interested. And then after these initial connections, I started doing some behind-the-scenes reading. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had some family situations with my dad and my mom passing away, and my dad needed some situation that I was occupied with. So it was a couple months before I gave myself permission to say, okay, Ben, you can go for this. And he thought I wasn't interested because he wasn't hearing from me. Any of you ever had someone that, you don't know what they're thinking? And then one day, seemingly out of the blue, in December 2002, I called him up and said, I'm ready to go. Here's my credit card, LOI me. It's probably a nice Christmas present for him. He's super smart. But actually, the biggest gift was me. You know what the biggest, and I like to tell people this, the biggest thing anyone ever did for me in this business was his invitation and giving me a chance to look at it. And the fact that he didn't stop because the people before me said no. I'm glad that he gave me that chance because it totally changed my family's life. Okay? Now, with that said, going back to the health professionals, so I have found, there are a few teams, lines in Nu Skin that do really focus on health professionals, but it's rare. Okay, even what started OTG, focus on the scanner. They didn't take the scanner primarily to health professionals; they took it out to the world. And same with myself. I found that when doctors have come on my team, often it has been because of some behind-the-scenes relationship. Maybe they were the husband or wife of someone who someone else knew, and that person got started on a product and said, hey, you should look at this. Their wife or husband said you should look at this. I had one case where it was someone's own doctor, but they were like the same age, and this doctor cared for the whole family, and they were both women, okay? And the woman patient, Martha, she brought her dad, her parents in to see this, I'll call her Vivian, this doctor as well. And I think Martha's dad said to Vivian, basically he said, "You don't look so good. Why aren't you on my daughter's products?" And she was kind of embarrassed. She said, "Wow, even my patients are noticing I'm getting." He said it a little stronger than that because they're Spanish and they're kind of direct with each other. And so anyway, he said, "Even if my own patients who love me are noticing that I'm looking stressed and not looking so good, maybe I should take a look." Because she'd been inviting her for years to get a demo. Okay, but finally, for some reason, it was because of that. And then she says, "Okay, I want a demo and I want it now." And they did it like on a Sunday afternoon or something like that weekend. And Martha was smart. She did the demo. Vivian wasn't even looking at this from a business standpoint, but she did immediately a 3-way with me just to connect with another person to say, "Hey, there's more possibility here." And then she let her know that, hey, at that time there was some incentive to LOI. You know, if you get these 3 kids, you can get this other one for free. I don't know if you guys have incentives right now. It varies from time to time. We don't have that right now. But at that time, you just use what you have. Okay, and she was like, "Okay, makes sense. I want to try the product anyway," and she did. And eventually, it was after that. So she first got interested in the skin for herself. Okay, and then she learned about the scanner and the other things after she already ordered that product, and then she started using that with her patients. But it was a process. So the long and short of it, 2 things I would say on that is one, often it's a personal relationship. Okay, and 2, here's the second thing, because how many of you often you think, okay, Galvanic Spa or Luma Spa, let's go to beauty specialists, or scanner, let's go to health professionals. How many of you sometimes have that thought? Okay, if that's your arena and you have connections and influence in that arena, that can be great. Or if you bring someone on your team that has connections and influence in that arena, that's great. But you going cold, unless you have enough passion to really develop your expertise in that arena, it can be an uphill climb. And so here's a thought, and you can get with your upline. I don't know, Christian, if you tell people things different, is that kind of what you find? Okay, thumbs up. Okay, but here's one thought, and this Artemis Limper. How many of you know Artemis Limper? Another Team Elite. So she's my now one of my big mentors and upline support persons, and she articulated very clearly. I realized, what you're looking for. I'm not necessarily looking for other health professionals. If I bring in a health professional, it's because that health professional is an entrepreneur who happens to be a health professional. You see what I'm saying? In other words, they think like an entrepreneur. They understand timing, trends, they want freedom, they want independence. So they might be a doctor, they might be a beauty specialist, they might be a salon owner, but they already have that kind of thinking. And so when you open a door to a business possibility that makes sense, they're open to looking. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so that's what you're looking for. So it's not so much the profession you're looking for, it's the person. That's probably what I would take away from this. It's not the profession, it's the person. How does that person think? Are they open? And you don't know unless you ask, okay? But going back to the notice, part of the notice, someone was asking earlier when we were having a discussion, how do you qualify people, okay? As you're noticing things, you might notice someone seems to have a neat presence or energy, they seem to be engaged with those around them, or online they seem to have some influence, and so you notice something about them, you might want to explore. Do you have a way of connecting with them? Can you open a door and ask a question? And one of the first things you're always doing is asking a question. So that's a couple things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that helpful? Okay. Let's see. 3 products for the rest of my life. So if I were here in England, R squared, no question. Okay, R squared. All right. And I kind of say Life Pack and Marine Omega kind of go together because that's kind of your nutritional bank account. So we'll make that, kind of one. And who wants to throw out? What would their third one be? That might vary a little bit depending on what you'd have. I'm trying to think all the products you guys have. And I'm naming nutrition. Were we just talking nutrition or any products?
Nutrition as well.
What?
Nutrition. Free nutrition.
For nutrition. So and probably Pro B here in England. Okay. Pro B. That would be a powerful combination. Okay. In the U.S., of course, youth. I would be taking youth, R squared, and then probably my nano. Would probably be the big 3. Okay.
Go back to Pro B then, actually.
Yes.
Can you mention what?
The specialty Pro.
Why are Pro B such a high quality?
Yeah. So. So one of the things that about New Skin, and I may share a little bit of this more in the presentation, but I'll just mention briefly, they're extremely committed to purity, okay, making sure things are safe, and also making sure that the active ingredients are there, that there's a measurable difference. You guys have heard that phrase, a measurable difference. They're committed to that. And so with our Pro B, unlike, just getting a bunch of different probiotics and maybe throwing them all together and hoping it's going to do some good, they actually picked a strain that came from a woman, a Norwegian woman, and it's been cultured from her. It's in the scientifically available, she actually stayed much healthier than people around her. I'll just say it simply like that. And so this strain has been cultured, and this particular strain is actually unusual in that it actually survives the stomach acid. A lot of things don't get past the stomach acid and aren't still alive. Okay, so it survives the stomach acid and is very good at colonizing the gut. So this ProBio is very effective, and that's why it's chosen, and that's why there's only one strain, because if you think about it, if it's actually helping grow, having more doesn't necessarily, more kinds may or may not help, because if you got more kinds but one competes out the others, eventually all the others are going to go away as well. And then another thing, and then again, this is, how many of you know what's on the bottle doesn't necessarily mean of a product in the store, okay, any store, all the nutritionals, doesn't mean that it has what it says on there. In many cases, there was a big thing in the news in the US, a bunch of things tested off the shelf that didn't have what it said was on there. And secondly, even if it has what it says, doesn't necessarily mean you're absorbing it or it's getting where it needs to go. Okay? New Skin's very big about what you use, whether it's on your skin. How many of you realize some of our skin products, what's special about them is not only the active ingredient, but the active ingredient is getting to the level of your skin that it needs to go to actually have an effect. Well, same with their Pro B. It's no good if it just says, something says billions of units on the thing if they're all dead, okay? Or if they all die when they go through your stomach. So Pro B is guaranteed to have that 2 billion colony-forming units still alive at the end of shelf life. At the end of it sitting on the shelf, it's guaranteed to still have that live activity, and they get through your gut. So that's just an example of something that's really cool. I travel with my LumiSpa. I use it every day. I love it. And for convenience, just because it's super easy to travel with, I have my Pearls, my True Face Essence Ultra. But at home, I use my Age Like Me. I love it. Super easy, even for a guy. That customized skincare, put it on super quick. And it's something I don't think. Do you? No, you don't have it. There's something else, but I won't say. Uplifting cream, True Face Essence Uplifting Cream. When you guys get a chance to have that, it's really cool. Immediate effect, and it's really cool. Okay, quick. Let's see. How do I get? Oh, okay. Want to give you before I go into like my routine and routine in general, what's important, because that is really significant for us. I want to go back to a concept that helped me. I was in a room like this. It was actually long and narrow like this in Chicago with the team lead Dan McCormick a number of years ago. And he was doing a little distributor training before the business briefing, and he shared something that has stuck with me a long time, and it helped me realize why some people don't stick with this, and the understanding, if you get this picture that I'm about to tell you, it'll help you stay in it to actually get the reward, okay? And it's this, he said, network marketing, when you have a good company like ours, because we're not even talking about a lot, I don't know, how many of you have friends who their company changed a comp plan or went out of business? Okay, we've encountered a lot of people like that, so that is a factor too. But even if you have a good company, which is relatively rare, okay, less common, New Skin is very significant in that even here, building it, the first part is like pushing a boulder up a hill. Okay, think of a hill or a mountain. So the first part is like pushing a boulder up a hill, meaning if you stop pushing, it's like the whole thing rolls back down. Any of you ever felt that? Like it's all unraveling. And then what happened with those two people that introduced me to Marion is they're like, I came here for the freedom, but it seems like I'm pushing and some great things happen, but as soon as I let go, it rolls back down. And so they decided to quit. But then I realized what they didn't realize, or they lost belief, okay, that there was another side of the hill. Yes, if you only have a direct sales part of your business, you're only making one-time sales, and you don't build leaders and build long-term, loyalty and orders, then you're still on that upward thing. Or if your company goes out of business, then yeah, it all rolls back down. But when you have a solid company and comp plan, and how many of you are excited about velocity? I mean, it's really, okay? you can push to the point where then you get some leaders on your team. And by leaders, I mean someone who is connected to their why enough that they're going to do this with or without you. Okay, and they've connected to the team, they've connected to the product and the company, and they have their own reason for doing this. Well, then your business starts to have a life of its own. And now your boulder's on the other side and starts rolling. And what Dan says, he says, now what I do day to day doesn't have a major impact either way on my business, either good or bad, because it's got a life of its own. And I realized that's what we have the chance to build here, because you're not worried that the company is going to go away. And they're constantly innovating new products. We've got a solid comp plan. We've got amazing people and culture. So however long it takes and whatever your journey is, if you keep going, you can get over the other side. But the other thing we've also noticed was once you stop questioning yourself and you embrace that and you get to work with your daily plan, you can get to the other side a lot faster. So daily routine. A couple of things that were super impactful for me, and I hope I remember to answer your question about what I'd say to me too. A couple of things that were super impactful for me. One is having something in the morning every day that I did before I started working my business and before I started, getting into the other active tasks, work, kids, emails, messages, whatever it is, of some kind of private personal time, whether it's 15 minutes, an hour, half an hour, whatever time your routine allows. But some time that is either meditating, visualizing, definite main purpose statement, affirmations, but something where you're connecting to your why and connecting something more than just the task of the day. And one way I describe it is we're constantly responding to things, right? And if all I look at is what's there today, and also what's not there. How many of you find that you're often looking at what's not there? What's not in your bank account, what's not in your volume, what's not on your team, who's not showing up? You guys notice that? Okay? But if that's occupying 95% of your thought and emotional energy every day, there's no room for it ever to change. So you need that space, whatever time allow. I mean, at least 10 or 15 minutes, maybe you have 20 or 30 minutes, maybe it's a little longer, to nourish. Put some energy in your body and some water in your body, but also to nourish your why and your vision and picture what you're creating and fall in love with it, okay? So that picture is starting to grow, and it also almost becomes like a vacuum that starts sucking things into it. Instead of your picture being as small as only what's there right now, and maybe once in a while you have wishful thinking that I wish I was like, the team elites, or I was on the trip, or whatever, but you're kind of wishing, you're not really believing it. Instead, you're starting to grow that vision every morning. How many of you ever daydreamed when you were a kid? And stuff. So you're starting to grow that vision. You can do this during the day too. And then all of a sudden people start showing up. You start meeting people, you start acting on things, and it's almost like you did a bunch of work already before you even start working that day. Okay? And then you start talking to people, and it's like the needle's already moved way ahead, and it's easier for things to start happening. So that's one thing. You got to have that personal morning routine. Okay? Then the second thing is actually the reaching out. And I would say right now what we're starting to teach our team in the U.S. is whether you're working primarily online or offline, that if you're wanting to build a team, okay, and build leverage, that your actions are leading to actual conversations with people. Does that make sense? Actual connections with people that you potentially could bring on board and develop as leaders. Okay. Now you may be working with the system on social selling. You may be working offline where you're getting customers and referrals and all kinds of things, and that's all part of it. That's all part of volume. But right now I'm going to talk about really finding leaders like those of you in this room who want to be free and I'm going to partner with you and even carry it beyond you. Is that something you guys are all looking for or all wanting? Okay, so think of this as part of your daily routine is to really focus on opening up those new conversations and invitations and keeping that pipeline full. So if I was to, and I knew this intellectually, but if I was to go back and talk to myself back then, that's probably one thing I would say is, because I was stressed, I left medicine before I replaced my income here, and we moved, and we're having babies, and all kinds of challenges, okay? And plus, every now and then new things were happening. Anything new ever happened in Nu Skin for you where, either your tools change a little bit or your product changes a little bit? So lots of changes. So if I was giving myself advice, I would say, Ben, no matter what's happened, put the blinders on and make sure every day you're making those new connections and new conversations. Because when I really went into momentum, that's what happened. As I just focused. My big question that I was leading to was to find out, are you open? Is this person open? And if they are, I developed my belief to the point where if you're open and you have a desire to be free, you absolutely can do this. Now it's just a matter of you choosing it and you being willing to go through your journey, whatever your journey is. But there's no doubt in my mind that this is valuable to you. And if I just keep opening those doors and then giving people a step to take. And you might write this down. I see each interaction, even after people sign up, as an invitation to engage, okay? In other words, I don't want to just give information. I want to have an interaction and then invite to a next level of engagement, which might be meeting a partner, it might be meeting face-to-face, it might be trying the product, it might be getting started in the business, it might be coming to an event, but it's always, what is the next, if this person's open and they seem interested, what's the next thing I could connect them to expand their exposure and their ability to succeed here, to grab hold of this and succeed here. So I write this down too, the big three. Okay, the big three. What's your big three? Now this could be, and especially in the morning, write this down too, win the morning. Your big three and win the morning. Because we've also found, I was reading this on the plane on the way here, that how many of you are at your peak performance 24 hours a day? Your energy, everything. Any of you ever get a little bit tired or just need a break sometimes? Okay. Yeah. They have found not just in Nu Skin, but just in business and in life in general, even peak performers, it's probably, especially because our brain consumes about 20% of our energy, and because there's so much calling for using our brains these days, using it, distracting it, all kinds of things, that we probably have like 4 to 5, even the best of us, 4 to 5 really good productive hours. And most of us let those 4 to 5 get distracted too, okay? But if you could really focus, and because, how many of you know if you get a good start, it's easier, you feel better about your day? Yeah. Or if you let it kind of get away from you, you feel bad, and then it's hard, you're like, okay, forget today, I'll go to tomorrow, okay? So if you can do your big three in the morning, what your big three things are that are important. You can always have a big three for the afternoon, your big three when you come home from work, but in the morning, what's your big three before noon? That's really important to get done. And then, in particular, what are your big three contacts? That would have been my, every moment, what's my big three contacts, the next 3 people I could reach out to, and either start a conversation with or do an invitation and go further, okay? So that's gonna be a big thing, because if you do that consistently, you could move forward immediately. This month of October, you could start moving things forward, this week. I also found that when I focused on new conversations and invitations, it was less than a week before I had new appointments, new things happen. Okay, usually a few days or more. So it's not long to put yourself back into action and into momentum. And so you want to work on that. So I would write this down too. 5, 5, 3. We've been kind of talking about this because I heard someone talking about this in relation to social media, and but this could apply offline too. And it's part of keeping your business moving forward. You guys are all familiar with American football, right? I know your football is different over here, but so you know the concept of getting a first down. That you're not always going for the touchdown, but you're at least going for a first down. You want to move the ball forward on the field, so hopefully within 4 downs, you cross 10 yards and you get a first down, which means you get to keep going, okay? And eventually you get a touchdown. Well, in the same idea, the concept of your big three is every day you want to move the ball forward a little bit. And you do that every day for 30 days or 6 days a week, however you work it. The compounding of that is very powerful. And over 90 days between now and the end of the year, could be very powerful. So 553 is opening 5 new conversations or reopening 5 conversations with people you haven't talked to in a long time. Now, in the online context, this means messaging 5 people a day, not first about the business, first to connect. So that's where that notice, compliment, ask a question comes in. Okay, maybe you notice something on their profile or something they posted, and then you compliment, you ask a question. Or maybe it's something you notice about someone here in the hotel or your daily life. Or maybe you realize it's time to reconnect with your cousin or someone else. And so you message them, hey, what's up? How are you doing? How are the kids? And you're genuine. You're just re-establishing a conversation. Okay, and then you have some back and forth, and then the second 5. Okay, so the first 5 is just opening conversations, reconnecting with people, or having new conversations, because you want to fill that pipeline from which you then could. The second 5 is 5 invitations a day, invitations to toward either the product or the business, depending what you're focused on. Could be toward a demo, it could be, anyway, 5 invitations or conversations about the business or the product. And then the 3 is 3 presentations a day. 3 people who actually watch an online presentation or actually meet you for a demo or actually come to a business briefing, or maybe you get on a video chat and you share your story and invite them to look further or create a 3-way, but it's that next step. Okay, if you're starting from cold, you might need to start just reopening some conversations and connecting with people, so you start having some conversations of some rapport with some people online. But then you can take it to start asking a business question. All of you have questions from your support team or team about just opening a door with an invitation question, okay? And then the third thing is moving to, so every day you start having appointments or presentations going on. How many of you know that if you did that consistently, even in the first week, you started having some appointments, not to mention a month, you could start having some new action in your business, okay? And that 553 could be done in very part-time hours. Okay, so if you really want to go faster, if you're full-time, you could increase that 10, 15, 20 a day. Okay, and then go from there. So that's kind of the key, is win the morning, have your morning routine, and remember your big 3. And the core, if you had to focus on one thing, is new conversations and connections with people, like my meeting that realtor. Sometimes you'll meet someone, maybe, what is your name with the tie and the suit? So maybe I'll meet Sammy, and maybe I know I'm not going to see him again because we happen to be passing in a hotel or something like that, but I just can't help, or we're at a cafe, but I maybe noticed something about him, so I just say, hey, can I ask you a crazy question? Or, hey, I just noticed you guys were talking about, you're on your phones, I couldn't help asking, what is it you do? And then he tells me, and then I might say, I'm just curious. That's another phrase you can write down, I'm just curious. And then I might say, my partners and I are expanding in the area. We're doing something on social media, or expanding a business. We're always looking for sharp entrepreneurs. Are you at a place where you'd be open to exploring something? And then maybe he wants to know about it and stuff, and I go, no, I know you're in the middle of stuff. I got to go somewhere. Let's exchange contact info, or are you on Facebook? And let's connect. Let's set a time to connect. Okay, so that might be one example. The other is online. You're messaging. Maybe we've chatted back. What is your name? Laura. So maybe Laura and I have messaged. I said, Laura, I just saw your profile. Looks like you're a mom. It looks like you got a business too. What is it you do? And then maybe you answer back, and we chat a little bit, and you ask me a little bit about me, and I say a little bit and stuff. And then it could be anywhere from that day, the next day, or maybe a little longer. You've got to follow your gut. But the neat thing is, if you have lots of conversations going, eventually every day you'll have some people that you're at the point where I might say, Laura, I'm just curious. You seem to be, it looks like you're doing XYZ or whatever. How long you been doing that? Or it looks like your husband and you own a car wash business. How long have you had that? Wow, cool. It must be challenging doing that with the kids. And she messages me back and then say, I'm just curious, are you at a place where you keep your eyes open for other business projects? Or maybe she's like the guy who heard me. Maybe I already got a sense from our talking that she's already mentioned, we got this business, but we're getting tired of it. I can hardly ever see any, my kids or my husband anymore and stuff. So I might say, hey, I'm just curious. If there was a way to expand in another arena that could give you more time with your family, would you be open to exploring? I haven't said anything about Nu Skin yet. I haven't said anything about a product yet. I'm just opening the door. But if she says yes, someone asked, what's next or whatever, if she says yes, then that's where I can invite her to whatever your next step of your, whatever your presentation is. Let's meet for coffee, let's get on a video chat, let's, here's a link you can watch, and let's talk right after. How many of you use any type of link or recorded presentation? Is that anything? Okay, so if you're using a recorded presentation, we have found there's kind of two ways, and definitely work with your support team. They'll tell you what's working the best. One way is to do a lot, just numbers, where you've got a lot of people looking. But we have found if you more want a higher return, but a little bit less numbers, is if it was Laura, right? If instead of just saying, well, look at this, let me know if it interests you, what I might say, if I've already connected to you where you're saying, well, yeah, I'd be open to looking, I might say, listen, I'm going to give you something to look at. Maybe it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. When would you have 10 minutes to look at this? And you say, well, I get home from work at here. I could do it at 7. I'll go, great. I'm going to message you at 7 o'clock and send you a link to watch. And then how about if we talk at 7:15? You're like, okay, great. So I make it more of a, since I don't have the power of being face to face with you, I at least want to make it more of a definite appointment. Because what I'm conveying unspokenly is that this is significant enough that it's worth you looking at it, and it's worth us getting a definite sense of, is this something you're interested in or not? You see what I'm saying? A lot of us are more comfortable just sending a bunch of stuff out and then hoping things come back to us. But if I really want to know, and I like this, Artemis says, when I notice someone's sharp, I want to get a definite yes or no to them. I don't want to leave it just hanging out there. I want to find, what is your name? Kelly. So I want to know if, Kelly, are you open? And then if you're looking, then I want to know, did this capture your interest? So I want to make it definite. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I always want to expand it. Anyone that I really feel like is sharp, that I potentially want to connect to, as soon as possible, I like to get on a video chat or connect them in a three-way chat or something, because it is a relationship business. And the long-term leaders and partners, I want them to get connected in and have them feel connected if this is something for them. So, any other comments or leaders? I know we got different leaders here, and I know you all have your systems and ways. Anything you want to add to that might help complement what I just said? Is it good? All right. Other questions? I know we only have a few minutes. Was that helpful? Did that address some of your questions? Yes.
What is your advice for someone who's just starting or is less than like 6 months in the business? What is your advice to those people that are very new?
That's a great question. And what I would say, and this is going to be helpful both for your... Yes, she said, what's your advice for someone who just got started 6 months or less? Was that right? You reminded me of something that is important for us ourselves, if we're the one that got started 6 months or less, as well as the people we're getting started. And it's always important to help someone connect to why they're doing this, and then what's their next target. What is the bigger picture? Sometimes in the beginning, especially if you're getting started on social, it might be, maybe they just have a short-term target initially. They just like to make a little money. Once they see they can make money, then they're curious about how far could this go. Okay, so sometimes it expands from there. But you want to be aware in those first couple of weeks, definitely someone who has some potential, you want to visit and see what's their bigger dream now that they realize it could be bigger. On the other hand, if you were talking to me or was offline like I was, I wouldn't look at something unless it was big enough to give me freedom. Okay, because I was already busy. I didn't need to add something else. And so for that, helping me realize, okay, this is a place that I could get my time back with my family, and I could still make a difference in people's lives. That was important for me to know. Okay, and then once you know that, then you still want to have a more immediate target. Okay, what's our next target that we need to work toward, and then have a plan to work toward that. Does that make sense? And that plan, intermediate target might be, what's it going to take to cover my monthly expenses? If that's a goal of mine, okay? And then if that's a big nut to crack, then let's break it down even further. How about on the way there? What's something, what's an intermediate step, and what would that do for me? Sometimes when people give me a dollar amount, I'll ask them, and what, they may say, oh, it makes, I'd like to make $1,500, okay, a month. Okay, what would that do for you? And you start connecting the dollar to what it would do for someone and why, and then let's work toward it. And find out how much time do they have, what are they willing to commit, are they wanting to work more online or offline, where do they already have influence. I always recommend, it's not going back to the doctor question and stuff, always start where you have some connection or influence. Start where you are. Like for me, coming to Europe, my wife, I went to Provence for the first time a few days ago. But years ago, before I think we even started this business, she was reading the book A Year in Provence and something else and talking about France and interested in it. And it was funny when a few years later our business expanded there and we still hadn't been there. Okay, but I didn't do it by trying to find French people. I started where I was. Same with doctors that came on my team. I didn't necessarily go after doctors. I started where I was and kept expanding, kept going. But eventually all kinds of different people showed up on my team, but not because I personally invited them. I invited the people I could. But then eventually the ones that did this, it led to others, and it kept going. So eventually the mechanisms of the business kick in for you. And it's just a matter of sticking with it until that happens. Yes? Tell me your name.
Tom.
Tom, okay.
Could you quickly touch on for maybe some of the newer people about the scanner, like why the technology is really why it's unique and
Yeah.
like why we should like really utilize it in our businesses maybe.
Okay, fantastic. Well, a couple thoughts. One is that
I know it's a total different topic in its own
no,
way.
but a couple quick things. One is, here's a concept that I think a lot of you get, but if you don't, this is something to duplicate on your teams, is realize whatever you're using to open the door, whether it's LumiSpa or it's toothpaste, those are probably two big ones right now, right? Toothpaste online and LumiSpa for demoing it offline. Whatever is opening the door, that's what it is. It's opening the door to more. It's like an on-ramp to the highway. But you don't want to stay on the on-ramp. People who come in, even customers, you want to eventually upgrade them if they want to use more to more. And certainly distributors, it's up to the highway, to know that there's more for them. So with that said, the scanner is a wonderful way. It may or may not be your door opener unless that's your field or you're passionate about it. But absolutely, because of events and everything, all your teams, eventually you want them to get healthy on the inside too, and get scanned and redirect their spending and get on nutritional. So what's unique about the scanner is, one, how many of you know there's a lot of supplements? It's confusing, right? Online and on the shelf. And how many of you wonder if it's working, if it's doing any good, or which do I choose? Okay, so Nu Skin has put in all kinds of science, and I'll probably talk about it briefly for the guests, all kinds of science in to give you some really quality, measurable things, just like we gave the example with Pro-B. Well, LifePak, R-Squared, they're amazing, okay? But the end consumer doesn't know that, so what they develop is they discover it and then have further developed this Nobel Prize-winning science. It's based on Nobel Prize-winning science, Raman spectroscopy, to develop this amazing technology. I think it's like Star Trek. It looks super cool. It's portable. I mean, it's wireless, and it uses light. It just uses light. No blood, no tissues. In 30 seconds, and you get its index of your carotenoid.